Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast, live from Edley's at 12 South. I am Paul Kuharsky at paulkuharsky.com. I like to say my name a lot at the beginning to establish who I am. I'm part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm here to talk Tennessee Titans. We're going to hit the team losing out on John Harbaugh, a lot of candidate talk, some Amy Adams Strunk rehabilitation talk, and, of course, all of your questions heading into the weekend. Lots and lots going on. Plenty to talk about. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate being at Edley's, my favorite place in town. Appreciate my light working so nicely here for those of you who have the delight of looking at my bald head. Actually kind of shaved because my beard got long and it was easier to do. Don't worry, the scruff is coming back. I know you're very concerned. Happy Friday. Happy divisional playoff round of the playoffs. Happy national championship coming on Monday. Hope you're reading at paulkuharsky.com. Drew Batty today has a big piece that is a just kind of his projection, if you will. He just took a shot, picked his head coach. It's a simulation. Picked his head coach, picked his coordinators, made his cuts, signed his free agents, and did a mock draft. It is a long piece. When you click on it, give it a second. It takes a second to load to give you all of this information, but a fun exercise. He's put a lot of time and effort into it. I then hurried him because we know the Titans reported yesterday that they're cutting soon to a list of 3 to 4 candidates, 5 tops for the second round of interviews. And NFL coaches who are working in the league are allowed to start to come to Nashville for in-person interviews starting on Monday, except those that remain in the playoffs. So you might want to root against the San Francisco 49ers if you're a Robert Salah guy. I am. I like the 49ers, but I think I would like to see them lose so that he could come here and they wouldn't have to wait on him. And here, Robert Draper throwing out some props. Appreciate that very much. He's not alone. Says Drew's simulation is the most comprehensive projection yet of what 2026 could be for the Titans. Reason alone to subscribe to my website. We've got somebody listening from Panama overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Sounds very glamorous and a reason to make us jealous. Though it has gotten warmer in Nashville, but the wind blowing like crazy where I just came from in Brentwood, Tennessee. So my car says it's 50. Feels like it's 20 at my house. So let's start with this. What are the Zoom level interviews in the NFL? And I've talked to a few people who have been in these type of interviews. They're very cursory. They're very scripted. They're very unsurprising for people who had been in them before. And they're very philosophical. That's the basis for the title of this podcast. You primarily asked about your philosophy. Some first-time guys are surprised, at the lack of the depth of these interviews, which are 2 to 3 hours. I think they're 3 hours maximum. I think for the Titans this time around, Mike Boronzis is really doing the bulk of the talking. We know he's got 4 other guys in there, starting with Chad Brinker. Amy Adams Strunk has not been involved at this level, which is a good thing. There have been 16 interviews. We'll talk about everybody in a minute. But they talk staff, they talk about some things. It's a surface level, get to know you conversation. Some of these young guys, first timers, go in there brimming with confidence and information, and they come out and they're surprised maybe to not be asked about the salary cap or some of the more detailed stuff like that, which, a head coach isn't in charge of the salary cap, but he needs to have some working knowledge of how it's going to affect his job. Those questions don't really come until the second round, where you're in town for a full day or maybe more than a full day. And your interview goes beyond the Boronzis and the committee and Amy Adams Strunk, and you work around the building and everything. But it's a much more detailed thing. So this first round, largely philosophical and cursory and surface level. Not that I wrote this week, and it's true, you get a lot of great information. You have Steve Spagnuolo in. He's not getting a head coaching job in Nashville. I believe he's under contract to defensive coordinate the Chiefs. So you're not getting him, but you get a lot of information out of him, and he's friends with Boronzis from their time together with the Chiefs. And so there's a lot of information to be culled there. And I saw the old Packers executive, Andrew Brandt, who put up a video that said much of what I wrote. Like, you have time waiting for the 19th and in-person interviews. Smart to be doing what the Titans are doing. And I wrote that before he said it, but it's a popular opinion. Al Davis used to do this. He was renowned for doing it. Pick everybody's brain. And I wrote, if the Titans hire one guy as a head coach and don't hire anybody else out of this search, if you've got 15 other people that pass through and you got information from them in these conversations that you could file away, and then you're playing against them and you have some sense of what they think about Cam Ward, how they would have deployed him, how they would have defended him, and you've got that in your notes and you could put that in your scouting report and stuff, any information is good information. There's no reason not to have that stuff. I'm working on getting kind of an itinerary feel for what the more extensive interviews will be. So stay tuned for that. If you're not following me on Instagram, quick plug, I've been doing almost daily reel on there with something short like that, like the impression that Boronzis making on these people going away. We're doing better with views on those reels. Follow me on Instagram. Watch those reels. They're like mini podcasts to hold you over until we get to the podcasts. All right, I'll take a question or two, and we'll get to go candidate by candidate. CRA's got McDaniels, Salah, McCarthy, Stefanski, unless LaFleur comes open. Any of these five are bust. I know there's some stuff out about LaFleur and the Packers not doing very well on the contract stuff so far. I think that's a lot of posturing. I don't think LaFleur is getting fired. Ready, set. Padigo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, says if he remembers correctly, I don't know if you do or don't, Callahan was the one and only second interview 2 years ago. Do you think it goes the same way? Should we read into who gets the first, second interview? It's a good question. I don't know. But I think guys do start coming off the board next week. And so, yeah, maybe. Is the sky falling because it didn't get Harbaugh? No. Let's talk for a second about Harbaugh. Look, coming in second doesn't mean a lot. I mean, if you win the AFC or NFC championship, it means something. Not on the day of the Super Bowl, but down the road. But coming in second for John Harbaugh, a lot of people say it means the same as coming in eighth amongst these open jobs. You won't say 9 because one of them was the job that he got fired from. But, I mean, it is meaningful that he saw the Titans as the second best landing spot out of these openings. The Giants, whether you like it or not, have some prestige. They've won titles. They're, a franchise that has a long, long history. The Mara family still has some clout behind it, even though things have gone south up there. Going there first, they didn't let him go. They let him go, but they didn't let him. They didn't let the Titans get up there to Baltimore. And so look, he is a stability coach first and foremost, a CEO of the first order, going to have a great staff, well connected, well respected. He's not getting fired after a year or two. I think people want to work for him for sure. And, would have had a great relationship, I think, with Mike Boronzis, a great working relationship, and things would have gone well, undoubtedly. Number one candidate in this pool. But that doesn't mean number 2, number 3, number 4 candidates aren't going to be very good coaches in the NFL. And Giants have more talent on the roster, that's for sure. That is for sure. I don't necessarily believe in Jackson Dart, and I don't necessarily believe in I don't necessarily believe in Cam Ward yet. I think Cam Ward has more long-term promise. But there's more to work with on the Giants roster currently, particularly defensive front. Very nice. Have some receivers that are ahead of where the Titans are, et cetera, et cetera. More to work with. Didn't even get an interview. That's the tough part about it. Jumpman says, well, if you got an interview and you lost off to the Giants, does that make it harder to swallow or easier? Okay. Before we get into these candidates, here's one thing that Titans fans are not considering with regard to Shula and Kingsbury, who are on the Titans list of 18, but who do not have interviews scheduled. And Shula is interviewing with 3 teams this afternoon. This is the window the Rams gave him to talk to people. Kingsbury interviewed in Baltimore, talking both head coach and coordinator. And Kingsbury apparently is in the thinking of the Eagles for their offensive coordinator position. And people are on the Titans for not getting these guys in the door. A lot of people, particularly interested in Shula, saying, how could they not get him in the door? Are we sure it's the Titans who are failing to get these guys in the door? I'm not. Perhaps Shula, who's got limited time and resources, prefers the 3 jobs he's interviewing for to the Titans job. That's entirely possible. And perhaps Kingsbury doesn't believe the Titans are serious about him as a head coaching candidate. I'm not convinced they are, and that they'd be more interested in interviewing him for head coach as a precursor to getting him potentially in line to make a charge at him for offensive coordinator. And he's not interested in that because maybe he's got a crack at Baltimore, or maybe he'd rather coordinate for Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. And so too many people thinking the Titans are missing out on these guys when maybe these guys just aren't interested in the Titans, which is fine. They've got plenty of other people interested in them. It's a better way to think about it, I think. All right, I'll take some questions and then we'll go to the list. McCarthy, too many people excited about McCarthy. McCarthy has not evolved, I don't think, and I think he's a dinosaur. Are they pitching a new stadium to these coaches? Sure. Is it high on the list? No. Coach spends one day every other week for 18 weeks at his home stadium. It's better than playing in a dump, for sure. For sure. But the Titans facility is not at the stadium. This is not where he spends most of his time by any means. So is it nice that they've got a new stadium? Sure. Is it a predominant selling point? Absolutely not. How do I feel about Salah? I've been a fan of Salah from the beginning. A couple of these other coaches got fired and went in front of him to me. I would still say Salah may be my top guy. Maybe my top guy. All right, let's go with some of these guys. Let's go lightning round, if you will, and then we'll circle back to more of them, all right? Mike McCoy, absolutely not. That was a courtesy interview. Matt Nagy, prefer him as a coordinator to him as a head coach. He's not under contract to Kansas City to coordinate next year, so you can be on the market to go be a play-calling offensive coordinator as opposed to returning to Kansas City. Don't know if they'll have him or not to not be a play caller, where Andy Reid does the play calling. So potential play calling offensive coordinator, but we don't know. Vance Joseph, I think, probably has a better shot than a lot of us think. Was not very successful in his first go-round as a head coach. Now has a couple years working for Sean Payton and has seen how Sean Payton runs an operation, and I think that is added value for him. Is he realistic? I think he's a realistic possibility. Steve Spagnuolo, I mentioned earlier, I don't think he has any shot at being in here in any capacity. I would cross him off the list in terms of wearing two-tone blue in any way, shape, or form next year. Lou Anarumo, defensive coordinator of the Colts. I think that's fact-finding, doing the guy a favor, getting his name out there a little bit, finding out about how the Colts defensive coordinator views a team that he plays twice a year, getting some thoughts on defending Cam Ward and the like. Under contract as defensive coordinator. Colts made no changes. He did not come free. He's not going to be here. Raheem Morris, I don't think legitimate head coaching candidate. Maybe I'm wrong. I think a defensive coordinator, possibility. Kevin Stefanski. I think, is a good head coach. You don't win Coach of the Year twice coaching the Cleveland Browns without being a good head coach. I do wonder if he's got the oomph and the pizzazz that the Titans need in that job following Brian Callahan, when clearly they'd like to get a little bit more of the Mike Vrabel personality there. So that makes me a little more reluctant on him than I was when he initially came free. I do think he's a good coach. I do think he could be a finalist. But that's what I see as the downside on him. Jason Garrett, absolutely not. That was another one of those, why not have him in? My brother worked for him in Dallas. The guy's got a different perspective on the league from his chair at Football Night in America, et cetera, et cetera. Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, has a reputation as one of the risers in this coaching market. I think highly regarded by a lot of people, has some head coaching experience, albeit at the collegiate level and not greatly successful, but has been in that CEO role. And I know the Packers didn't necessarily play great defense in the playoffs during their trouble with the Bears, but I think he's a legitimate possibility. Arthur Smith, we know him. We love him for having run the best Titans offense we've seen. Finished second in the league during the Titans' best year of offense that we have seen. Unprecedented heights with Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and of course A.J. Brown, who they then made a huge mistake with. I think he is probably a B-level possibility. I am not circling his name. I like him a great deal personally. I wonder about player relations. And I do think, look, you want somebody that navigates this line. I wrote about this. This is one of the best things Boronzis said during his press conference after the year. Want somebody that can both deal with conflict and camaraderie, kind of. Well, the conflict part is increasingly difficult, and it's not just that coaches aren't good at it, can't handle it. It's the players are so freaking soft that it's very difficult to toe that line. Mike Vrabel, say what you will about him, has a skill at towing that line. And certain guys around the league, Harbaugh in Los Angeles, has a way of towing that line. Tomlin did, whether you liked what he did over the last 8 years or not, has a way of towing that line. The Titans need a guy that can do that. I think there are some questions as to whether Arthur Smith can do that. Robert Salah, we've talked about. I definitely circling Robert Salah. They haven't talked to Robert Salah yet. there are strong indications that Robert Saleh really, really likes this job. He's talking to the Titans by Zoom on Sunday night. I think if that goes well for him, that he has a very good chance of being somebody that they bring in person to be a finalist for this job. Cliff Kingsbury, they haven't talked to. I think it's very late to get him scheduled, and I think they prefer him, as most of the league does, as a coordinator to a head coach. He was not a good head coach in college. He was not a good head coach in the league. Getting a third shot, second NFL shot is difficult for some guys. Quality coordinator. I was surprised that he was a fall guy in Washington. I don't think it was necessarily fair. Very good with Jaden Daniels in his first year. Then the second year he's hurt, and a lot goes awry in Washington, and they dump him that quickly. Hard for me to come to. Jesse Minter, Harbaugh's defensive coordinator, came from Michigan. Not a ton of NFL experience, but again, kind of pair him with Hafley. They seem to be the two young defensive coordinators who have matching kind of tracks here, that they're the two guys that people are expecting to rise. I think both of them might come out of this cycle with 2 of the 9 jobs, and I'm giving him a chance to be a finalist for the Titans. Chris Shula, we just talked about. If he's not interviewing preliminarily, if the Rams lose on Sunday, it's conceivable the Titans could have him in or talk to him quickly on Monday as like the final piece of their first round and go from there. But I just put an X next to his name. Mike McCarthy, I'm not convinced that I said this, not well sourced and not confidently, that I was not convinced that the Titans were in love with him the way a lot of people think that they are in love with him. I wasn't sure he was going to get an interview. He's got an interview. I think it's tomorrow. Daboll is in today. But I'm still not sold that he is a guy that they want to marry long term. Possible, yes. Probable, in my eyes, no. I don't know. Should I give him a semicircle or should I give him an X? I'm giving him an X, and here's where I'm taking it like a little bit more to gut feeling. Mike McDaniel is one of the most intriguing guys here. The guy is unquestionably offensively brilliant. He has made so many people better. These running backs, A-Chain, nowhere near that good. Mostert, great out of nowhere. Offensive players, he took Tyreek Hill, who was fantastic in Kansas City, and he came to Miami, and he was better. It's crazy. Aaron Brewer, who we saw and we knew that Mike Vrabel loved him, that Todd Downing and Tim Kelly loved him, but he did not prove it to us here. And he goes to Miami and he plays at a Pro Bowl level and, worthy of that, played really well. Mike McDaniel and Mike McDaniel's system make people better. Oddly, I looked at this, and somebody could look this up and throw this stat at me. You know who did not get better there? NWI, who scored 19 touchdowns on under 40 9 touchdowns, under 40 catches last year for the Titans. And he went there, and I think he caught 20 passes and didn't do anything for the Miami Dolphins. Started 3 games, played, I think, 13. It didn't do anything, an exception to the Mike McDaniel making people better rule. He's got a weird personality. He's a weird guy. There are lots of clips out there of him behind the scenes. It's fun to watch him coach. Is he a leader of men? They need a leader of men. I'm not sure that Mike McDaniel is in the right circumstances with the Tennessee Titans following Brian Callahan. I'm iffy on him. Last week, I was thinking he was my guy. Now, I'm not as sure. He's a semicircle for me. I don't know. Trying to talk to more people about him. Yeah, I know his name's Mike, and everybody's fascinated with the Mike. I didn't say Nagy's leader of men. I called him a maybe. Too many people are just determined about Nagy. We'll get back to that in a minute. Two more. Jonathan Gannon. I don't think he's a head coaching interview. I think he's a defensive coordinator interview. And I think you could do worse than have Jonathan Gannon as your defensive coordinator. Now, there aren't a lot of offensive head coaches that we've discussed here. So I think Jonathan Gannon could be a defensive coordinator for a defensive head coach. And I think he could do a lot worse than that. And Brian Daboll is the last one here. And I think Brian Daboll could potentially be a terrific offensive coordinator for Cam Ward. You remember the Giants really wanted to trade up with the Titans last year to get Cam Ward. So that would tell you that the Giants and their head coach did a lot of work on Cam Ward. There were a lot of things about Cam Ward that the New York Giants liked. So Drew Batty, in his pretend project where he picked a head coach and a coordinator, cut people, signed people, and drafted people, he went with Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator, paired him with Cam Ward, gave Cam Ward Brian Daboll's offensive system. And I think that's a pretty good call. So Brian Daboll, I think a good offensive coordinator candidate. Pair him with Robert Saleh. That's what Drew Batty did. I think that'd be a pretty nice combination. And Tall Texan said Daboll took Josh Allen and turned him from raw talent into the MVP he is today. I mean, I don't know that he gets all the credit, and I think Josh Allen was going to be a good quarterback no matter what. But Daboll is the guy who got him there. Fitz Eagles OC, Ryan said. Do I know if Cam's talked to any of the candidates? I doubt that Cam has talked to candidates at this stage. I think Cam will talk to the candidates next stage. And by the way, maybe he has, but again, 2 to 3 hour surface level stuff, I doubt it. Maybe some guys that were in the building. But remember that Mike Boronzis kind of downplayed what the media really took off and ran with about Cam. Some media did. And I don't have any problem with the quarterback having a brief conversation with his potential head coach. CRA likes McDaniel as head coach, Morris as his defensive coordinator, Bones as special teams coach, and Munchak as the offensive line. So I did report that Mike Munchak, under the right circumstances, would love to come back and work for the Titans as offensive line coach. I think that'd be a hell of a get. He's not a young man anymore, but if he's got the energy to do it, he could do it. Look, John Fossil is going to be back unless the coach coming in somehow has a phenomenal special teams coach that he's aligned with, and I think that's very early. In terms of the order, David Jackson asked, in terms of the order of the interviews that happened so far, I don't think you should read anything into it, particularly amongst the guys who are working in the league now, and particularly amongst the guys who are working in the league now who are working for teams that were in the playoffs or are in the playoffs. Absolutely not. Did Batty do enough to help Cam Ward in his simulation? Well, he got him Alec Pierce, which I think is a huge get. Probably going to have to pay him more than Drew paid him. So I think that's big. He got him I'm not going to know names off the top of my head. There are a lot of names in there. Got him a veteran guard to replace Zeitler. And the weight on Slater. Got him, drafted him a wide receiver, I think, in the 3rd round. Yeah, I was surprised. Robert Draper's asking, what did I think of Drew's projection that Hecker and Sly should stay? That seemed off to him. I don't have that much of a problem with Sly. I mean, Sly had a pretty good year. His misses are ill-timed. I will give you that. But Hecker, Yeah, I think they need to do better than Hecka. I need to do better than that. Ryan says by not waiting to interview Shula, does that show maybe they want to make a quick hire? By not waiting, they've waited, but again, I think that could be Shula more than it's the Titans. So I don't really know what you mean there. Roy Jenkins will take Salah, Daboll, Morris, and buy a lottery ticket. If I had to go Nagy or Daboll for offensive coordinator, which way would I go? Well, the more I thought about that, for a long time I would have said Nagy. But Daboll makes a lot of sense if you think about it, based on the preparation for Cam. And I'm sure he had to develop at least a little bit of a relationship with him during that process, right? S. Rob says, have I heard anything about Jeff Hafley and what Boronzis thinks about him? Let's get this out of the way, S. Rob. I don't recognize your name, so forgive me if you've been here. Like, have I heard anything about anybody? I get these kinds of questions a lot. If I heard something about somebody, I'm not waiting and reportable. I'm not waiting to be asked about it in a podcast. What I've heard that I can report, I report. So, and Boronzis not letting anything out about what he feels about any of these guys, good or bad or indifferent. And the Titans have done a good job of keeping a tight ship. Am I eating anything at Edley's today? You're damn right I am. I'm having an avocado salad precisely at 2 o'clock. Jumpman says, we keep saying Nagy as OC, but why would he leave KC OC to be Titans OC? Because Andy Reid is the play caller? Yes. Also, he doesn't have a job with Kansas City next year right now. And he arranged it that way on purpose because he wanted to make himself available for jobs this year where he would have more power than he has in Kansas City now, which is the path for him if he doesn't get a head coaching job this year to get a head coaching job in the future. So go from where he is, Andy Reid's right-hand man without play calling responsibilities, to a place where he has play calling responsibilities, have success with that, and then maybe he gets himself in the head coaching pipeline for a second chance. CRA is just too convinced. I mean, CRA says Nagy will be on the team, either as head coach or offensive coordinator. So likely a defensive coach with Nagy, offensive coach. Boronzis will bring Nagy sadly. All right. So this is an overwhelming opinion that Nagy is going to be here. Most Titans fans seem to believe this, or a too high a percentage. And I'll come back to you with this. If you think that Boronzis is going to lean that heavily on his friendship with Matt Nagy. Chad Brinker is really good friends with John Eric Sullivan, who up until recently was in the front office of the Green Bay Packers, where Brinker knew Sullivan the same way that Boronzis knows Nagy. And Brinker interviewed Sullivan, and by all accounts, Sullivan did well. But you know who did better? Mike Boronzis. And so from what I've heard, it was a very difficult phone call for Chad Brinker to call John Eric Sullivan and tell him that he was hiring Chad Brinker. And I know a lot of people have bad feelings about Chad Brinker, but it looks like he made a good hire in Mike Boronzis. Now, what do we think that Mike Boronzis, a smart guy on his own, learned from that process? He got the job over Chad Brinker's longtime friend and Green Bay colleague. So would he think that Mike Boronzis is interviewing 15 people in order to just land on his friend? Or do we think he's going to pick the best guy and be willing to make the call to Matt Nagy and say, Matt, I love you, but I'm hiring X? I mean, maybe he hires Matt Nagy, and he'll explain his rationale if he does. I think Matt Nagy's got a 1 in, I don't know, how many guys do I circle here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think he's got about a 1 in 6 chance. And I think it's a straight 1 in 6 chance. I don't understand why people are so hardline bent on the fact that he's going to hire his friend, when we just saw another guy who most people like less go against that himself to get Boronzis. Well, I mean, Ryan says Cam is the most important piece of this franchise. They need McDaniel to give him the best chance to succeed. Now, I think Cam has a better ceiling than Tua. And I think McDaniel's a very, very good offensive coach. But what happened to Tua? I mean, Tua's floor should have at least come up under McDaniel, and it didn't. I mean, Salah, somebody's asking about Salah's offensive coordinator. Salah's got a good relationship with McDaniel and with Mike LaFleur. But McDaniel, I think, kind of has a standing offer to coordinate in Detroit if he doesn't get a head coaching job. And he's also got 3 other head coaching interviews. So any chance you keep Denard? Corky's asking. I mean, there's a chance, but any head coach is going to want to be of significant influence on his coordinators. Now, we are talking about Boronzis being influential with coordinators. I think he'd be influential with coordinators on the opposite side of the ball from the side of the ball the new head coach comes from, for sure. They certainly want experienced coordinators, going the opposite of what they got with Callahan, where there was just too much inexperience across the board. A head coach who hadn't called plays, who was calling plays on offense, an offensive coordinator who hadn't called plays, a defensive coordinator who hadn't called plays, and a special teams coach who was a first-timer. That's way too little experience in those spots. They're not going to do anything like that. So we'll see. Roy says, I have to trust Boronzis to do what's best for the team until he gives me a reason not to. So far, so good. I think that's a reasonable strategy. Let me talk to you about Edley's Barbecue, this fine establishment from which I am broadcasting. This is the 12 South location, but you are more than welcome to go to Nolansville, to go to Franklin and the factory, to go to Franklin and Berry Farms, to go to Sylvan Park, to go to East Nashville, to go to Donaldson, to go to Gallatin. All of these places are of equal quality, equal excellent quality. It's a fantastic restaurant with fantastic food, barbecue variety food, a big thing in Nashville, in large part because Edley's has become a big thing in Nashville. The portions are big. The food is hot. It is delicious. You do not wait long. You do not pay a lot. The beverages are big and cold. The service is spectacular. Did I miss anything? Can you smell it? I'm going to be eating some as soon as I am done with this broadcast. You should come soon for a business lunch or dinner with your family, or this weekend. Come. The big TVs all over. You can see one over here and one over there. They're all over the place. Come watch a half of one of the football games this weekend, or come Monday night during the national championship game. It's a great place to eat. And if you can't make it, listen, download the Edley's app. It's the best thing going. None of these rip-off delivery fees that all of the DoorDashes and Grubhubs have. Very inexpensive delivery fee, very fast to your house, very hot, and it'll be like Edley's is in your house. You can't go wrong. I know a lot of you are huge fans of the restaurant, and I offer a reminder, and you come more often. If you're not familiar with it, I don't know where you've been, but it is time. Eat at Edley's. Period. Keep it plain. Keep it simple. Hook them up. Appreciate it. Have I heard anything about Clint Kubiak? No, they're not interviewing Clint Kubiak. If the Titans and Ravens want Robert Salah, which one do I think he picked? From what I have heard, and I believe it's good information, Robert Salah really likes Tennessee and Miami. I think those are the places that he would lean the most. CRA says now we got Brinker has won him over because he found and hired Boronzis. The Titans setup is improving, he says, but wish list, nail this hire, get Amy to not be involved, and no Burke, please, ever. Burke is not involved in this process. He's not been in these meetings. To hear stories from the inside, even on the last hires, he was just a resource for these people. And I find it hard to believe because he's a big resource for Amy that he's not asked his opinion. But we'll see what happens here. We will see what happens here. What else are you wondering? Here is Nathan, who took his wife to Edley's last week at Berry Farms. Solid. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Please go back. Nagy as head coach, PDFF says, would be easier to swallow with the likes of Daboll and Gannon as coordinators. If not, then give him McDaniel or Salah.
I'm not ready. What's that? No, not on my watch. How's it going?
We won't keep Denard, but I bet he's successful in his next stint as DC. I'm not sure his next job is going to be as defensive coordinator. It could be coaching defensive back somewhere. He did interview for defensive coordinator. Was it in Washington? I think it was in Washington. So it's good for him that he got out of there. McDaniel floor was 7 wins on a bad roster.
Yes, that's right. Good to see you again. Are you sitting right there? You're good.
Which camp of the fan base am I most looking forward to dunking on post-hire? The Nagy or nothing folks or the McDaniel wears capris crowd?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, a guy can wear what he wants to wear. I think it's weird to send out a selfie of yourself in a merry-go-round wearing pajamas. But, you know, I want a guy that can make the offense go. But I also want a guy that can lead men and hold people accountable. Holding people accountable is a category you could run through with these guys, and it's going to be a discussion point with these guys. And there is a perception, fair or not, that they will certainly run through with these guys about their ability, their track record of holding people accountable, where they envision themselves going in terms of developing their ability to hold people accountable here, if they are the guy here. I think that's a harder thing for guys to do now with the kind of people that are playing in the league. And that's Boronzis' job, to find out who can do that and how convincing are they, and can they stick to it. You know, we heard Nagy in a story that was designed to help rehabilitate him by Dan Pompei at The Athletic. Talk about his first year he was himself, and then when things started to get hard, he was not. Well, you know, how much spine does it take to stay yourself when things start to go badly? I want a guy that's going to be himself all the way through, no matter how things go. And a guy, and you've heard coaches talk about this, like, if I go down, I'm going to go down on these principles that I'm telling you about right now. Now, I'm willing to learn about myself and realize that things may not be as I expect, and I will adjust along the way, but I'm not going to abandon the roots of what I want to be, the core of what I intend to be, and lose my job over the course of 2, 3, 4 years because I strayed from these things I'm telling you about. I'm going to be hardline on these things, maybe minor tweaks. This is who I'm going to be, and this is who you're going to get. And I'm confident in these things. I'm confident it's going to work with these things. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm not going to be a wobbler. I'm not going to be a waverer. And too many guys wobble and waver. And that's what ends up undoing them. Now, maybe they would have been undone by their core principles too, but fucking stick to them. That's what I want. That's a big part of what I want is somebody who's confident, will work with Boronzis, but is going to stick to what he wants. I talked about this. Was Garrett more of a formality interview? I mean, he's not going to get the job. So this is a good point here. Brandon Lewis. So fans being convinced that Boronzis is going to hire Nagy no matter what. Brandon Lewis in here says the fan base was stained by Vrabel's commitments to his relationships, and now we think everybody in the organization is going to do it. And that's a fair point, Brandon. It's a smart point. But I'm giving you evidence here. Chad Brinker didn't do it with John Eric Sullivan from Green Bay, so it doesn't happen at every level of the organization all the time. Chad Brinker hired Mike Boronzis instead. Mike Boronzis was the beneficiary of somebody not sticking with their friend. I think it's a little presumptuous at this stage to think he's automatically going to hire Nagy after he's been exposed to all these people. We have to wait and see. We don't know which way it's going to go. But I do understand what you're saying. Vrabel was so loyal to his people that I understand why that feeling may be ingrained so deeply into Titans fans. It's a good point. That's a fair point. What else do we have, people? Here, MB, you got a more reasonable take. I'm not buying the Nagy nonsense. I don't believe Boronzis would bring in this many guys if he was all in on Nagy. I haven't mentioned Kingsbury. I did mention Kingsbury early. Interview hasn't happened. There's not one scheduled. And that could be Kingsbury not being interested, knowing he's probably not getting a head coaching job here and that it's more of an offensive coordinator talk. And he's interviewed in Baltimore for the head coaching job, but with talk of offensive coordinator. That's a better place to go coordinate based on Lamar Jackson. Philadelphia apparently also interested in him as offensive coordinator. And they're a year removed from winning the Super Bowl. That's a better place to coordinate. So he might wind up with better jobs if he's going to be a coordinator again. And I don't have a problem with him not being a head coaching candidate. I think he was exposed in Arizona as not a good head coach. And he wasn't a good head coach in college either. And Jonathan Gannon, Robert Salad, is pointing out, talking about Gannon as a good DC here. Jonathan Gannon started out in the NFL under Mike Munchak in this very city with this very team. So did Kevin Patullo, who's on the outs. See, Craig Aukerman, the CRA says, Craig Aukerman and Downing are why we worry about Nagy, and Malarkey with Trubisky is why we worry. And that's fair. I will say, Vrabel didn't have a pre-existing relationship with Todd Downing when he hired him to bring him in to coach tight ends after Arthur Smith got promoted, and then he ultimately promoted Downing. Now, why he liked Downing so much, I don't know. But when he hired him, everybody says, well, this was Vrabel hiring one of his boys. He wasn't his boy. When he hired Todd Downing, Downing was not his boy. Now, when he got here, it became his boy, and a lot of us wonder about why and how and all of that. Bringing him in, it was not his bull.
Oh my god. I love that. My invitation was on lost in the mail.
Any prediction on when they hire someone? I mean, make a prediction, and then everybody will come back and say, oh, you said it would be Wednesday, and they didn't hire until the Monday after. Or you said it would be the Monday after, and they hired on Tuesday. I would think this week.
It's a
They did not talk to Flores, and a lot of teams aren't going to talk to Flores because he's got a lawsuit against the league, and it's sticky. Also, Flores, has got a great defensive scheme, and he's a great defensive coach. He did not relate to players well at the end of his time in Miami. He was not relating to players well at all. Do I think Stefanski's more likely to take the Falcons job? I don't know. Do I think Stefanski's more likely to get the Falcons job? Yes. Is Stretch with Vrabel in New England? Yes, and Stretch has a very big title. Stretch is doing very well for himself. Very well for himself. I mean, Brett Downing thinks the coach is getting hired Monday, so that means they're hiring the first guy that they have in. Evan Tharp says McDaniel will get hired. I presume you mean here. Callahan was not respected by his team. McDaniel has the swag. I mean, I don't know if McDaniel has the swag. It's already got. We're talking still about Vrabel and his connections. Hired Downing from within to run Vrabel's offense instead of an outside grown man, just like you could see Bowen being Vrabel's DC next year. Well, Terrell Williams is ill and may not be able to return. But Zach Kerr, another guy who is a lower-ranking coach for Vrabel here, who's worked his way up, is coordinating the Patriots' defense. And as well as the Patriots are playing, I can't see him turning away from Zach Kerr, Kuhr. Yeah, the Colt Anderson, you could say all you want about Craig Aukerman, but Colt Anderson was actually worse. It was a worse hire. Guy had zero experience. And to hire a good special teams player to be your special teams coach with no experience, maybe he was assistant for a couple of years. The Titans are not interviewing John Fossil for head coach. They're done with new names. Why does a candidate do a formality interview when it's almost a sure thing that it's just for information? Robert asks. Well, he's getting information too. He's making connections. He knows Mike Borgonzi now. He knows Chad Brinker. He knows Reggie McKenzie. He knows Dave Ziegler. He knows Dave Sagany. Guess who might be GMs in a league, particularly Sagany. But, Ziegler could resurface. You don't know what's going to become. I mean, you make as many connections as you can in the league. It's relationship business, like somebody's saying over here in the comments. It'd be crazy not to take an opportunity to talk ball with a room full of executives. Anybody asking about anybody else being added? I mean, they've talked to 15. There were 2 that they haven't talked to that they intended to talk to. Harbaugh would have gotten them to 19. Not imagining anybody else being added to the process at this point. Monday, the rules change, and they can have guys in who are in the league but no longer in the playoffs. And so everything changes. See if I had anything else on here I wanted to tell you about. PaulKuharsky.com. For less than a cup of coffee, a beer, or a cocktail, you get all my Titans news and analysis, plus Mike Herndon's analytics, Drew Beatty's film study, Braden Gall's draft work, and it's the best way to support independent journalism on the Titans. Please consider becoming a member. Also, I mentioned earlier, follow me on Instagram. I'm doing a lot of reels there. So when you're doom scrolling in front of your TV, why not have my pretty face appear? Everybody on the Tua thing, I said, why didn't Mike McDaniel get more out of Tua? And you're citing the concussions. Well, there was a Tua before the concussion. Yeah, I mean, I understand he got hurt. He's not the same guy he was before he got hurt. He was never, a super terrific quarterback in my eyes. Somebody says, would they consider Jason Garrett for quarterback coach? You think Jason Garrett wants to be a quarterback coach? Jason Garrett, who's got a cushy TV studio job, wants to do quarterback coach grunt work. Curtis said that McDaniel had Tua looking like an MVP candidate. Briefly. I think this is Steve Earle playing, and it's Steve Earle that I don't recognize, and it's pretty good. I don't understand the Mike McCarthy affection. Philip likes Mike McCarthy. It's his top pick now that they didn't get Harbaugh. 2 choice is Robert Salah. We'll see how this plays out. I mean, Mike McCarthy, it's been a long time. Like, you got to watch this Hard Knocks where he's showing Austin Powers clips to a room full of Cowboys who are like, what the hell is this? Hasn't evolved. Like, if you thought like Fisher got to be old school and outdated, I know we're going back a while there, but you need modern. We thought we were getting modern with Callahan, and it didn't prove to be modern. But Brett, again, here, he says, joined late, but Chris Shula not interviewing is a little disappointing. I understand they want somebody proven, but still, we don't know if it's the Titans who aren't interviewing Shula or if it's Shula who's decided not to interview with the Titans. And we have to allow for that possibility. When Vrabel was hired, what was my opinion on it? Day one, looked good. He made a great impression at the initial press conference. I mean, Vrabel had the advantage. If you're looking at like Halfley or Minter, I'm not saying their personalities are like Vrabel, but they're like Vrabel coming in as young defensive coordinators. Vrabel didn't have great success in 1 year as defensive coordinator. He had experience at Ohio State. But he was known in a different way because he won several Super Bowls in New England and had played. So none of these guys have that. And that was a differentiator for Vrabel because we'd all watched him score touchdowns and as a eligible tight end, and we'd all seen him make tackles. And we had pictures of him as a player in our mind, which made him a different guy. Halfley and Minter could be guys like that. They just don't have the exposure that Vrabel had from a 10 or 11 year NFL career. Big asks, the initial interviews have any discussions regarding staff? Some, but I've heard also that, a lot of these guys are, especially the young guys, prepped by agents, and they talk about guys that they often talk about guys they have no chance of actually getting or bringing with them. So, a lot of these high profile staff guys, the guys that we're talking about, guys who are going to end up being assistants, maybe a Raheem Morris or Arthur Smith may well be a coordinator again if he doesn't get a job. Kingsbury, Gannon, Daboll, they're big enough that they're factoring in the head coaching conversation. So, are Jesse Minter or Jeff Halfley, are they talking about hiring Brian Daboll as staff when Brian Daboll is, an established NFL coach? It's a very hard relationship to create. Like, hey, I'm the new young guy who might get a job, and I'd like to talk to you about potentially being my offensive coordinator if it's me that gets the job and not you. I think there's a lot of complications to that. And that's where somebody like Boronzis comes into play. right? Jennifer Rowe, how are you? She said, perhaps overthinking this. I don't think you are. Will there be any weight placed on who the team hires and their potential ability to lure free agents and top flight assistant coaches to the team? Well, certainly attracting staff is big, but the number one thing that attracts staff is that they believe in a program. So Boronzis helping sell that. Some of these young guys like Minter and Halfley have good reputations among their colleagues. LaFleur and Harbaugh would be vouching for guys that worked for them, which would help. Free agents, are going to talk to friends who played for these guys with the Chargers and with Michigan, or with the Packers and with Boston College. But then, usually comes down to money number one and opportunity number two. And the Titans are going to be able to offer plenty of money with the second most cap room in the league. And that's before cuts, where they can gain a lot of money. $22 million I came up with, at 24 last week, and the cuts that I would make. And opportunity, the depth chart is rife with holes and opportunity and possibility. Going to come down and look at the most recent questions, and we'll give things. Yeah, question like this is crazy, Petey. Did they give the McDaniel preliminary interview 100% focus since he was there the day before Harbaugh's supposed interview? No. McDaniel came in and they were completely distracted. They hardly paid him any attention. They had their heads down, writing notes about Harbaugh, and they basically just blew McDaniel off. I heard they left him in the lobby most of the time with a cup of coffee. Come on, it's a professional organization. There are times where you could say the Titans do incredibly stupid stuff, but they know how to respect somebody who's coming to interview. That's crazy. They're prepared to interview coaches. Harbaugh's not God. He's a coach. They're prepared to interview all these coaches. Have to do a little extra homework on Harbaugh. Maybe had to do less homework on Harbaugh because he's been in the league for 18 years and they know him. Stop the show. Enjoyed that. I don't mean that personally, Petey. It's just sometimes I think we go to crazy, extreme, conspiratorial, come up with crazy scenarios. Yeah. Sanchez is saying nothing more modern than weak men crying. I don't have to get into Brian Callahan on that level. He's a good man. He didn't have a great personality for the job. And there are guys with Brian Callahan's temperament who have won in the league. He didn't. He wasn't a good coach. J-Rob loved that Vrabel was a strong, accountable leader with a vision. At the time, we were trying to get away from the malarkey style, and it worked. Vrabel's first couple years. Yeah. It's also working Vrabel's first year in a different place. Quite frankly, it should have put an umbrella over this whole thing and said, it would be great if we were not having this discussion, because the Titans, 2 years before they fired him, found a way to sit down and, I don't want to say manage Mike Vrabel, but to see that things were heading down a bad track and preempt it. And Amy Adams-Strunk and Burke Nihill and Chad Brinker figured out how to all work together and satisfy Mike to some degree, which didn't have to be giving him all the power, just had to be letting him work with people that he could work with instead of doing something incredibly stupid like hiring Rand Carthon, which has been proven on every level to have been an asinine decision that threw this organization into complete disarray from which they're still trying to recover. An asinine move. And that Mike Vrabel might still be sitting in that head coaching office, that bad years for this team would qualify 6 and 7 win seasons, not 3 win seasons, and that Mike Vrabel wouldn't be in New England right now, maybe a game away from the AFC Championship. And we wouldn't have to be watching them look for a leader of men, because one of the best leaders of men in the league would still be the head coach of the football team. Just compelled to mention that. There's a reason that they're looking for a head coach who's got a lot of Mike Vrabel qualities. All right. I think we've done our work here. We'll end on this. Very good from Jordan Pace. Someone should comp all candidates requested for interview across the league versus Pelissero's list of the top 237 names to know. I believe it was 163 names, and I feel comfortable guaranteeing that all of the Titans' names, except one, were on that list. And it's hard to miss, but I'm pretty certain, and I might go back and do this, that Jason Garrett was not on that list. But maybe he was. Maybe he was. I mean, there's so fucking many people on that list. How could he miss Jason Garrett? How could he miss Jason Garrett? You people are terrific. This has been a terrific conversation. I appreciate it. I hope that you have a great football weekend. Stay tuned for more. Visit paulkuharsky.com. Be jealous of me and the lunch that I am about to inhale at Edley's Barbecue. Don't block the box, and be sure, please, please, to lock your locks. Cheers, everybody. Thanks.